Hello, strategic management students. Fred David here. Hope you're having a nice day today. As you know, we're working our way through the textbook and are developing a comprehensive strategic plan. Actually, we're on page 200 this morning. We're starting the section on implementing strategies. You realize there are three stages in strategic management. Formulating, that was chapters 1 to 6, and implementing, it's going to be chapters 7 and 8. So if you have your book with you, turn to page 200. Let's talk about this chapter 7 for a minute. Of course, it's going to be exceptionally important for organizations, companies to implement effectively whatever set of recommendations or strategic plan is developed and formulated based on the concepts, tools, and techniques in the first 6 chapters. I actually see on page 200 in this strategic management model, you see the little white area there that reveals the implementation section. So that's what we're going to start to focus on here. So I'm looking on page 203. Page 203, if you have your book with you this morning, I really like this figure 7.2 that compares and contrasts the formulation versus the implementation. Notice on this figure, strategy formulation positions forces before the action, whereas strategy implementation manages forces during the action. Strategy formulations focus on effectiveness. Strategy implementation focus on efficiency. You know, if push comes to shove, I'd probably say effectiveness is more important than efficiency, although they're both vitally important. Effectiveness, you realize, is doing the right things, and efficiency is doing things right. And looking on further in that diagram there, the formulation is primarily intellectual process as compared to being primarily an operational process with implementing. Of course, with the formulating, we have those 9 matrices that companies are widely using: portfolio analysis, SWOT, BCG, IE, Grand Space, QSBM. So looking on down that figure there, I see formulation requires good intuitive and analytical skills. You know, we were assigning weights and ratings to many of those matrices. They weren't wild guesses. They're based on our research and understanding of the company and the industry. But implementation requires special motivation and leadership skills. So we're going to learn in chapter 7 and 8 here, how in the world do you motivate managers, employees, executives to fire out of bed and work really hard for the company 12 hours a day or whatever, and know what's in it for them? And that's what we're getting at here in chapter 7. And that's what we're going to learn from in this chapter right here. So implementing is an exciting area to get into here as we shift gears from formulating the strategic plan to the major concepts and tools and so forth we'll need to make sure the strategic plan is implemented well. As you see on page 207, implementing strategies means allocating resources. We touched on that in earlier chapters, allocating resources, for example, across segments. Remember that was a primary reason why portfolio analysis was so important, is that ultimately we're going to need to allocate resources, scarce resources. No firm or company has unlimited resources in people, cash, or whatever. That's why on page 207, I see it starting to talk about the need to allocate resources across segments effectively based on a strategic plan. That's one reason we spent so much time on AQCD in earlier chapters. You remember the D in that is divisional or by segment or profit centers. That's another name for that. But you know what? This area that starts on page 208, matching structure with strategy, is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because being well organized, as you well know, is extremely important for overall success on an individual basis, and for the same thing is true for a company or organization. There's a right way to organize a business's structure, organizational structure. You may have touched on this in earlier courses in business. Remember, there are basically 4 types of organizational structure: functional, which is centralized; divisional, decentralized; strategic business unit, or SBU, where you would merge together homogeneous sets of divisions; and then the matrix structure. So in this project you're working on, I'm needing to see an existing organizational structure that the firm currently is utilizing based on the positions of executives and so forth. Don't hunt that long trying to find an organizational chart. Just structure a firm with regard to your existing chart based on the titles and the concepts that we're going to see here in chapter 7, and then develop a new and improved chart, again, based on the concepts you're going to see here on page 209, 210, 211, and these pages following right here. So like I say, there's a right way to do this. I give some guidelines before we look at advantages and disadvantages of each of those types of structure I mentioned there. Let's look at a few guidelines on developing an organizational chart. Actually, they're over on page 215. I don't know if you can turn with me to page 215, table 710. But I see right there, number 1 says, instead of chairman of the board, make it chairperson of the board. That's a nice guideline. So if your company currently, if that position is chairman, I would like in your new and improved chart, change it to chairperson. Number 2 there, make sure the board of directors reveals diversity in race, ethnicity, gender, and age. Yes, sir, absolutely. Both the board of directors and the top management team, you want to look for that. I mean, are these all white males in the top management and or on the board and or the board of your company? If so, in your new and improved chart, you want to change that and improve that. Number 3 there on page 215, table 710. Make sure the chair of the board is not also the CEO or president of the company. Yeah, that's just, you understand, the board of directors in an organization or company, that's who evaluates the CEO. So it's kind of mismanagement for the chairperson of the board to be also the CEO of the company. So if you see that in your chart, I'd want you to change it in your new and improved chart. So again, I'm going to be looking for 2 charts in your Word file of your comprehensive strategic plan, the existing organizational chart, and then what you recommend based on the concepts here presented in chapter 7. Number 4 on page 215, make sure the CEO of the firm does not carry the title president. You know what? We're going to use the title. We're going to reserve the title president for division head persons. Those division or segment head persons, whether it's by country or state or by product, so much accountability and responsibility has been delegated to those persons. They really warrant the title president. For example, with a cosmetics company, we might have 3 segments: fragrances, personal care products, or cosmetics, and a president of each of those. So it's best, it's recommended that the division head persons have the title president. I see on number 6, include a CEO if divisions are large or geographically dispersed. You know, there's a trend in corporate America today to not have a COO, to defer those responsibilities to a CFO or CIO, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Information, that type of thing. But if there are many divisions at all, research is okay with there being a COO. I'm really on board with there being a COO, a Chief Operating Officer. Now, who would report to the Chief Operating Officer? Only the division head persons. So the division head persons, those presidents, that's who will need to report to a COO. So make sure on number 8, make sure functional executives such as CFO, CIO, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Strategy Officer, R&D, all of these, Chief Technology Officer, HRM, report to the CEO, not the COO. So these are some broad guidelines I'm looking at here on page 217, 215 actually, then I'll be looking in your new and improved chart to reflect these guidelines here on this page. Of course, make sure there's diversity, as we mentioned, in race, gender, and age appropriately in the firm. Avoid the functional type of structure. This is number 12. Avoid the functional type structure for all but the smallest businesses. Actually, if a firm starts to get over 15 to 20 employees, I'm starting to want to shift to a divisional type structure. So let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of a functional, that is a centralized type structure, versus a divisional structure. And I see this being talked about back on page 210. You see these advantages here of a functional structure. This would be an example would be if you graduated and were an excellent chef and you opened up 3 restaurants, would you let the 3 restaurants, let's say in 3 different cities, do their own hiring, firing, promotion, advertising, that kind of thing? If so, that would be a decentralized divisional type structure. But if you did those things centrally, the accounting, the payroll, the hiring, the firing, promotion, advertising, if you made those decisions centrally, then that would be functional. So I see on page 210 that functional is simple, it's inexpensive, but a disadvantage is accountability is forced to the top. I mean, if one of those restaurants that I'm talking about starts to not do well, if you use in a functional structure, the head manager there could simply say, well, you know what, we're not doing that well, but guess what? You made all the hiring, firing, promotion, advertising, payroll, accounting decisions. So those are the reasons why our restaurant's not doing well. So I like to delegate accountability and responsibility generally to it and utilize a divisional type structure. But I see some other advantages and disadvantages of a functional structure as I see on page 210 there. So be mindful of those things right there as you're considering developing a new and improved organizational structure for your company. Actually, on page 211, we in table 7.8, if you could look with me on page 211 here in the 17th edition, I see the advantages and disadvantages of a divisional structure. And these advantages are really, really overwhelming here. There's clear accountability, allows local control of local situations, creates career development chances, promotes delegation of authority, leads to a competitive climate internally, allows easy adding of new products or regions, allows strict control and attention to products, customers, or regions. Those advantages, in my view, are based on current research, generally offset the disadvantages. Is that it is more costly, for example. A divisional structure is more costly than a functional structure. I mean, with the divisional structure, for example, in those 3 restaurants, you're probably going to need someone with a degree in business that knows something about some accounting, bookkeeping, human resource management, advertising, promotion, marketing. So you'd have to pay more with a divisional structure, and so that would make the divisional more costly. But again, the benefits I think generally I recommend to you offset the drawbacks on the division. So I really like the divisional structure. Now, folks, if we use the divisional structure, I see on this page 211 and 212, you could set these presidents up by geographic region or by customer or by product. You understand what I'm saying? So for Hershey Foods, you could have a president of chocolate, a president of non-chocolate, or alternatively, you could have a president, let's say, of the USA versus a president of outside USA. So you could set this up by product or region or by customer, really, in some cases. And these 2 pages, 211 and 212, talk about making that choice to try to determine the most effective type structure. So with the SBU, I see on page 212, that's a strategic business unit. What we're doing there, if you have a company or organizations with 15 divisions, firms typically or group them into 2 or 3 homogeneous groups called units, strategic business units. That's what that is on page 212. Be looking for that in your company. If it's a firm, let's say with Procter & Gamble with 50 different product segment persons or profit centers, you would want to divide those into strategic business units. And then the last type of structure we're looking at in chapter 7 is the matrix structure. I see this on page 212. Actually, one is illustrated for you on page 213. I noticed a lot of horizontal and vertical flow of accountability and responsibility with a matrix structure. Excuse me. Hospitals generally use this. Construction firms generally use a matrix type structure. So I see some advantages and disadvantages of a matrix type structure at the bottom of page 213. So organizational structure is critically important to being successful. You learned that many years ago that being well organized as an individual carries great competitive advantages over other colleagues. And the same thing is true in the business world. So I'm looking forward to seeing actually what you think would be the most effective type organizational structure for your your business. I see on page 216 and 217 what my co-authors and I provide right here is an existing organizational chart and a new and improved, just like I'm wanting to see you develop for your project company. For example, the one on page 216, I see the number one there, chairman of the board. Remember we just said, let's go with chairperson. And the number two position, CEO and president. Remember, we were going to reserve the title president for division head persons due to all the accountability and responsibility we're delegating to those persons. So anyway, there's an existing chart and then a new and improved chart that corrects the items there. I noticed we added the COO, you see, in that new and improved chart there. And who's reporting to the COO? On page 216 at the bottom, 3 presidents by region here, USA, Europe, and Asia. So yours will want to look something like that, following the guidelines here in chapter 7. So actually on page 217, we have Winnebago, the large recreational vehicle company located here in America. We have their existing chart and then their new and improved chart. So don't fret about not finding an organizational chart for your company in terms of the existing chart. Just use the titles of executives to do that. And of course, those titles are readily available in a Form 10K. Even financeYahoo.com lists the executive, or you just Google top executives of the company you're working, doing your project on, and you'll see who the top executives are. So folks, if it's okay, let's move on into a couple other management issues. I love this topic. If you can turn with me to page 220, linking performance and pay to strategies. My goodness, that's so important in a company because research is suggesting that even the person sweeping the floor in companies through an annual bonus or something, you'd want to link that person's performance or pay, that is, to performance of the business. So there's various ways to do this with stock options, bonuses, gain sharing. I see these talked about on page 220. So if you see that your company that you're working with is not doing this, you would definitely want to put it down as a weakness and then suggest some improved compensation system for your company. Of course, we want to balance work life and home life. This has become even more important with our COVID-19 year we've had here and more working from home. We do want to promote diversity, no doubt about it. I see here on page 221, 6 benefits of having a diverse workforce. You see, this gives some reasons why you want to have a diverse workforce. Look at number 1 there. Women and minorities have different insights, opinions, and perspectives that should be considered. You understand what I'm saying? So there's some real valid reasons that we need diversity in our top management team and really throughout our whole organization, from the board of directors right on down. And I see 6 reasons there on page 221 I want you to be mindful of in terms of why diversity is important. Okay, yeah. So the second, a corporate wellness program, I'm just turning over to page 224 right here. Very important in a company. I mean, does your project company, do you see in the Form 10K that they have a corporate wellness program? If not, perhaps you want to recommend that they develop one and earmark funds for doing that, because this again, research is showing to be an exceptionally important management tool towards successfully implementing any strategic plan. So this chapter 7, as you see here on page 224, is divided into 2 parts: management and marketing. I'm going to stop right here because we're finishing up the management part here, and we'll start again with the marketing part. So we're going to stop here on page 224. You know why marketing is a key business major at all colleges and universities and a key function of business, don't you? Because a business can go broke doing marketing. Marketing is extremely expensive. It can be, and there's a right way to do marketing for a particular company. And we're going to look at some tools, concepts, techniques to try to get that right here, beginning on page 224 in another segment. But thanks for joining in with me here on chapter 7 on this part 1, and we're going to speak in a few minutes about part 2 on chapter 7. Have a good day. We'll see you in a few minutes.